hitting the #1 spot in 16 countries, I think. Almost didn't make the album, George.
No, the guys hated it. They absolutely hated it. When I sang it to Roy and Mikey in Roy's kitchen in Earl's Court, he was like, "It's the worst thing you've ever written." And for some reason, we'd had a couple of hits, and I just, when you've had a couple of hits, you become an expert. And I decided it was going to be #1. And I went to Egypt on holiday with a cassette of it, and I kept playing it. I was like, "This is a #1 record," and it was.
Wow.
So
you were
about 8
right.
weeks.
The pleasure of
I should have
being
kept all the publishing, but I ended up sharing it with them, even though they hated it.
Well, that song comes from a very special period in your career, George, and that's what this tour that you're going on is all about, isn't it?
Well, what my manager does, he calls me up and he says, "You won't want to do this." That's his starting point. And he goes, "What do you think about doing Kissing to Be Clever, which was our first album, and then Calibre Numbers?" Obviously, we won't do every song, but I'm always keen to put, things we don't do. Because, when you tour, you tend to do the same things. And we've got quite a lot of interesting records and albums. So actually, it's going to be really interesting to revisit that sound, because I got kicked out of Bow Wow Wow. So I was trying to recreate that sound with Culture Club. So that first album is so stylised, and then what we became was very different. So it's going to be good to see if we can capture that same kind of youthful exuberance that we had when we started.
Well, this is it. So the sound was changing, which is interesting, but also life was changing. I mean, Colourblind Numbers, Kissing to Be Clever, 2 huge albums, and they catapulted the band to global fame. Was there a moment when you realised the scale of your success, when it really hit home?
I remember we were on tour and I was in Scotland and we had to cancel a gig because I lost my voice and the crowd were booing and it was so upsetting because the band wouldn't go on and say, "We have to cancel the gig." They made me do it. The next day we were #1. So we went from sort of having this terrible gig where I couldn't sing a note because I'd never been on the road before, to the next morning going, "You're #1." So it was quite amazing.
We've had, again, like I said to you before, loads of messages in. Emma has said, "I can't wait to see Boy George for the 5th time in December. I just love him. Can you ask him what his favourite song is from the first 2 albums? Mine is Victims."
Probably. Victims is a good one. There's a song called Mr. Man from the first album that we've never played live. That's really interesting because it feels like it should have been written now.
Yeah.
It's about bullies and, just that whole thing. And it's we feel like everything goes in a circle. We're still having the same arguments that we had 30 years ago. It's kind of amazing. So I can't wait to do that.
Well, speaking of arguments, George, you said you're calling this tour the Zero Arguments Tour. Why is that?
Well, we know what we've got to work with, right? Songs from this album, songs from that album, so there can't be any debates about, that. We'll argue about what songs we do, but, I think we try not to argue. We used to argue a lot, that was our thing. Now we try not to, or at least I try not to.
What have you replaced it with? What's taking the place of
joy?
Joy?
Absolute joy. Yeah, all the time. Just, enjoying it.
I think you've already announced, haven't you, that there's going to be some special guests joining you on this tour?
Yeah, we've got Tony Hadley and Heather 17, who I love, so that's really nice.
Nice.
Fantastic. And I mean, you've been on stage